Hello there and then welcome to a brand new video. This is Happy Beyond Numbers. Now in this lesson we are looking at rounding off, rounding up and then rounding down. I'm sure you might have heard of what the round off is, but then in this lesson I'll specifically explain what the rounding up and then rounding down also is as well. So without much ado or say, let's quickly look into it. Okay, so looking at this number grid over here, this is from 1 towards 100, you see, and I'm coming to use it to explain what it means to round up, down, and then off. So let's say for now, since our grade has only 1 to 100, we are going to consider multiples of things, right? So let's say we have a number 7 and we want to round it to the nearest things. We want to round it to the nearest things. Before we round, let's look at all the numbers that are multiples of 10. So as you can see, all these in this blue rectangle are the multiples of 10. We have 10, we have 20, 30, and then the list goes on and on and on. Now, which of these multiples of 10 can 7 move closest to? You see, it can quickly move towards this 10 over here. Meaning, if we want to move from 7 to 10, we are just moving 1, 2, 3 steps. You see. On the other hand, if you wanted to move to 20, we would have to move 1, 2, 3. Then we come all the way here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You see. Which is so long. You get it? That is what we call rounding off. So rounding off has to do with you just moving to the closest place value in question. And in this case, we are talking of tens. So you are moving to the closest digit, that is a 10. You get it? So let me take another number so I explain with that. So this time around, let's take 43. You see? So for 43, the multiples of tens that are around 43 is what? We have the 50 and then the 40. Now, talking of the 50, it would have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. But then for the 40, it just has to move 1, 2, then 3. It has to move 3 steps. Hence, if we are talking of rounding off, we would let it move to the 40 rather than the 50. You see? Okay, so with that said, let's then look at what it means to round up and then down. To round up and down, first of all, let's still take our 43. Rounding up simply means you want to move to the highest or the immediate highest multiple of the place value in question. In that case, as we have considered 40 and then 50 as the multiples of 10, you rather want to move to the highest one, not the lowest one. That is we rounding up. On the other hand, if you want to round down, then we are moving to the lowest one, which is the 40 over here. You see, now this rounding off, up and down has rules that can help us to easily do them, especially if we don't have the grade system. So let's look at how we can do that. So when it comes to rounding off, there are just two basic rules we need to know. You look at the digit to the right of your target place value. Now, if you look at that digit and then the digit is 5 or more, what we do is we add 1 to our target digit. But then if it is less, then we just keep our target digit. So what does this mean? Let's take a number. So taking the number 63,004, that is 634,121, right? 634,121. And we want to round it to the nearest tens. We are rounding this to the nearest tens. So our number in question is 634,121. 21. Now let's look at the number we have in the tens column. You see, this is what we have over here. Now it says, let's look at the digit to the right of our target place value. Our target place value is the tens. What number do we have to its right? It is 1. You see, now if it is 1, 1 satisfies what? 4 or less. So what we do is, we rather change this to 0, but this our target digit would remain as it is. So we still have our 2, and then you have a 1, 4, 3, 6. Do you see? As simple as it is. But then let's take another one that might have 5 or more. Okay, so for this one here, that is 634,578, and we have to round it to the nearest hundreds, right? So writing our number, we have what? This here. And talking of the hundreds, which number do we have in the 100 column? That is 5. You see? So it says we should look at the digit to the right of our target place value. Our target place value has 5 in there. Now the digit to its right hand side is a 7. So since it is 7, it says if it is 5 or more, what do? We add 1 to our target digit. So what that means is, instead of this 5, we are adding 1 to it. So that it rather becomes 6. You see? So it becomes 6. All of these ones on the right hand side becomes 0, 0. Then we have our 4, 3, and 6. That is, those on the left hand side remain as they are. But those on the right hand side will now all become what? Zeros. This is what we call rounding off. This is just a gist about it. Now let's look at the rounding up. So talking of rounding up, unlike rounding off where we have series of laws or steps, rounding up is quite straightforward. So it says, when you are told to round up, you always go to the next high number, no matter what the digits are. You see? So if I have 4 and I'm being asked to round it to the nearest tens, you see, you are rounding 4 to the nearest tens, then it is just going to give us what? 10. Just go up, always going up. It doesn't matter wherever the digit is. The same way, if I have 9 and I'm being asked to round it up to the nearest what? Tens, it is still going to give me what? A 10. You see? So if you have 40 and you are rounding it up to the nearest hundreds, that is also going to give us 100. If you have 99 and you are rounding it up to the nearest 100, it is also going to give us 100. So we are always moving up. You see? Meanwhile, for rounding down, on the other hand, we are always rather moving downwards. Now, you can also say that it is just the exact opposite of rounding up. You see? So when you are rounding down, you are always going for the lower number. For instance, if we have 123, you see, and we want to round it down to the nearest hundreds, right? So we are rounding it down to the nearest hundreds. Then that is going to give us 100, you see, because 100 is the lowest multiple of 100 you get. Do you get me? The same way, if you had 950 and you wanted to round it down to the nearest 100, you see, if you have 950 and you want to round it down to the nearest 100, you might have said this 950 is between 900 and then what? You have your 1000, you see, but we'd rather pick the one that is the lowest multiple of 100, you see. So rounding 950 to the nearest down, rounding it down to the nearest 100 is going to give us what? 900. So the most important thing is we are always coming down. That is what rounding down simply means. Look at the place value in question. If we are saying tens, then you are moving down to the next multiple of 10. If it is up, they are moving upwards to the next multiple of 10. But then if you are rounding off, then that is where we are looking at these two rules. You see, the two rules we considered. So if the digit is 5 or more, what do? We add 1 to our target digit and then make sure the remaining are what's written as zeros. But if the digit is 4 or less, then we keep our target digit just as it is and still change the remaining to be what? Zeros. So with that said, let's look at these solved examples just to enhance our understanding. So we are rounding off to the nearest 10. So for this first one, we have 43. Now, what number is in our target place value? That is what? 4. So since it is 4, remember we are rounding off. So look at the digit that is at the right hand side of 4, and that is 3. Now 3 is 4 or less. Hence, what do? We don't add anything to the 4. You see, we don't add any digit to the 4, but rather we change the 3 to 0. And that gives us our 40 over here. We have 87. We are rounding to the nearest 10. So this time around, our target is 8. The number to 8 right is 7. 7 satisfies the 5 or more condition. Hence, it allows us to add 1 towards the 8. So that it now becomes what? 9. Then we change our 7 to 0. And that gives us a 90 over here. For 125, rounding to the nearest 10, our target digit is what? The 2. To its right hand side, we have what? The 5. And since it is 5 or more, we are just going to add 1 to the 2 so that it becomes 3. Then we change this here to 0, giving us a 130, right? So let's look at this as well. Now this one here is for rounding up. So for rounding up, just as I said, over here we have our 41. All we want to do is we are looking at the multiples of 10. The nearest one that is above 41 is what? 50. So rounding it up to the nearest multiple of 10 becomes 50. For 7 over here, it is already a multiple of 10. So there is no need going up or down again. Then for the 190, it highest or the next multiple of 10 to it is what? 120. And then same applies over here. This lesson has been long, hence I would give out some exercises you can try on your own just to test your understanding. So here you have the exercises. You have this first one here where you are rounding off. Take note, you are rounding off. The second one, you are rounding up. This here, you are rounding down. Then for the fourth one, these are word problems. That is to test your understanding on what we have learned. This is how beyond numbers where we learn maths the easy way. On this lesson, we have just spoken about rounding of numbers, rounding up, down, and then rounding off. If there's any issue of concern, you can always let me know at the comment section, and I'll address that for you. See you in our next lesson where we look at significant figures. Bye for now.